For the last 25 years, one of the most influential bands in the world hasn't technically existed. No real members, no aging rock stars, just 4 animated characters. And yet, Gorillaz have become one of the most creatively important musical projects of the modern era. They've released multiple iconic albums, collaborated with legends from completely different genres, and built an entirely fictional universe around their music. But their real influence goes way beyond charts or awards. Gorillaz have changed the way many people discover music itself. And in this video I want to talk about why the Gorillaz are so important and why they are my favourite band. So the first album I ever bought was the self-titled debut from Gorillaz called Gorillaz. And one song on that record always stood out to me, 192000. It's not necessarily their most complex or ambitious song, but it is quintessentially Gorillaz. As that strange, funky groove, it blends electronic music, hip-hop and alternative rock, and it perfectly captured what the band was trying to do from the very beginning, break the idea of what a band should sound like. And this is the genius of the virtual band. Gorillaz were created by musician Damon Albarns and artist Jamie Hewlett. Instead of forming a traditional band, they create a virtual one as a commentary on the current boy band trend, lampooning the manufactured nature of the bands at the time. The members were fictional characters, 2D, Murdoch, Noodle and Russell, and this idea unlocked something incredibly important. Because the band was animated, it removed almost every limitation that real bands face. Their characters don't age, the lineup never really truly breaks up, and the band isn't trapped inside one genre or identity. Albarn once explained that real bands inevitably change as the people inside them grow older, but Gorillaz can remain timeless while the music keeps evolving. That freedom allowed the project to experiment in ways most bands simply can't, and every album is a new world. This is one of the most remarkable things about Gorillaz, that every album explores a completely different musical landscape. Their debut album blended Britpop influences with electronic beats, hip-hop rhythms, there's even a big amount of Latin music within this album, and it's a process Damon Albarns described as liberating, stating, "One of the reasons I began Gorillaz is I had a lot of rhythms I never thought I could use. A lot of that stuff never really seemed to manifest itself in the music we made together as Blur." And then from there came their global breakthrough, Demon Days. This record leaned heavily into darker themes and hip hop influences. It also produced some of the band's most iconic tracks and became their most commercially successful era. But what made the album special wasn't just the hits, it was the collaborations. And one of those collaborations changed my musical taste forever. The track November Has Come introduced me to MF Doom. At the time, Doom was already a legend in underground hip hop, but many alternative music fans had never heard of him, like myself. Through Gorillaz, an entirely different audience discovered his style, and for me the track opened the door to a whole new world of music. Now I am an absolutely monumental MF Doom fan, and that's something the Gorillaz have done repeatedly throughout their career. They don't just make great songs, they introduce their audience to entirely new artists. For me, Gorillaz reached their artistic peak with Plastic Beach. This album feels less like a normal record and more like an entire creative universe. The themes revolve around consumerism, environmental destruction and climate change. But the real magic comes from the range of collaborators. Artists like Bobby Womack, Lou Reed, Snoop Dogg, they all appear on the album. Through Gorillaz, you're discovering Bobby Womack's incredible soul music. I discovered Lou Reed's legendary work in art rock, and suddenly I was exploring musical talents I might never have otherwise listened to. And for me, most bands influence other musicians, but Gorillaz influence their listeners. They act as a gateway into different musical worlds. Through their collaborations, fans are introduced to artists like MF Doom, Idols, Lou Reed, Bobby Womack, Slow Tie. That's hip hop, soul, art rock, post-punk rock, UK rap. Very few bands expose their audience to such a high variety of musical styles. In many ways, Gorillaz function kind of like a museum of music. Every album introduces you to something new, and that's the beauty of the Gorillaz. Their latest appearance on SNL, they performed the track from the mountain, Moon Cave, with a mishmash of creatives. If you look at who performed this, you have Damon Albarn, who was once the lead singer of one of the biggest Britpop bands of the 90s, performing with Black Thought, who was lead singer of The Roots, Asha Puthli, an Indian soul singer, all performed with a backing band playing real instruments. Maybe you don't like the song and that's perfectly fair, but you cannot argue there is something creative happening within this performance that you just don't see with modern day performances on SNL. And that's the beauty of Gorillaz. Some of their songs aren't great, simply because of the sheer amount of genres they cover. But that's okay. For young music listeners, they cover such a range of genres, you can discover music and musicians you never thought you would have. What adds to the uniqueness of the Gorillaz is the world that surrounds them. Thanks to Jamie Hewlett's incredible artwork, Gorillaz have managed to build an entire fictional universe around their idea. There's backstories for each band member, there's different phases of the band, there are animated music videos, online experiences, visual storytelling that just expand the world of the Gorillaz. It's almost like a comic book series combined with a band. And that storytelling makes the project feel bigger than just albums and singles. And it becomes an ongoing creative universe. And this is how Gorillaz can maintain relevance, because they can just update themselves to what's happening in pop culture at the time. And that plays into a huge reason why the Gorillaz have remained successful. Unlike people who amazingly age, they usually stay and fit into the era they began their careers. Because the Gorillaz are animated and can just change with the times, they stay relevant. They can always try and remain hip to a point where it doesn't look sad. So their newest album, The Mountain, does feel like a culmination of everything Gorillaz have explored over the last 25 years. One of the key tracks is Moon Cave. In interviews, Damon Albarn explained that the song is about man's need to create, stating it represents the place where everything, all human ideas come out. And it's inspired by his travels and grief and just symbolises the source of creativity. Even in the most isolated place imaginable, humans still feel the urge to make art, to create music and tell stories. The album overall is about death, reincarnation, and what it means to create. And I think that idea perfectly reflects what Gorillaz have always been about, reincarnating themselves and creating. Most bands eventually become nostalgia acts. They repeat the same songs and the same formula. But Gorillaz have survived for over 2 decades because they were never just a band, they were always an evolving project. Every album explores something new, every collaboration opens another door into music. And when people talk about influential bands, they usually mean bands that influenced other musicians. But Gorillaz have done something different. They've influenced listeners, they expanded people's musical horizons, and they have introduced entire generations to artists that might never have been discovered. For me, Gorillaz didn't just give me great music, they gave me more music. And that might just be the most important legacy a band could ever have.